Terrorism, the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims. That is the Google definition. But what are some examples of terrorism? 9/11 is a big example of terrorism. On September 11, 2001, a terrorist attack occurred that America was not ready for.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center.
At 8:45 a.m., the first plane crashed into the North Tower. Confusion occurred and everyone in America had no idea what was going on. Shortly after, a second plane crashed into the South Tower. People started to assume this may be an attack and not an accident.
And right now, that was definitely looked like it was on purpose.
2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
Then a third plane crashed into the Pentagon. Then a fourth plane crashed at a field in Pennsylvania. It was later found out that these hijackers hijacked the 4 planes to crash into the buildings. These attacks were later found to be coordinated by Osama bin Laden, one of the leaders of Al-Qaeda. The 9/11 attacks, along with many other forms of international terrorism, changed the way the modern world saw these events and terrorism and how they prepared for it. But what effect does this have on the modern world?
One way it did this is through the development of preparation technology. We can see in this quote from the Washington Post that advancements such as the Los Alamos National Laboratory were made to prevent events like this from happening again. They were invented in response to international terrorism to think like terrorists and plan ahead in order to prepare for attacks if they were to happen. Another example is the new airport screening. The terrorists involved in 9/11 had no trouble hijacking the planes. So, the Transportation Security Administration improved and introduced new screening and X-ray machines. The purpose of this was to, if possible, stop these attacks from even coming close to being executed. These new technologies are just a few examples of the steps that were taken in technology to prevent international terrorism and protect the nations affected. After the attacks of 9/11, several security measures were also taken to protect people from international terrorism if it were to happen again. As you can see in this article, the security was lined up streets to protect a meeting held by President Bush. It was an economic summit of leaders from around the world, and after the increase of terrorism, they felt that they needed to secure it so heavily. We can also see in this quote by Homeland Security spokesperson that it was the most security that was ever needed. Prior to 9/11, these extreme measures were not necessary. This quote helps us see that, however, after, the fear that everyone felt after 9/11 pushed them to do everything they could to protect against terrorism. Security measures were forever increased since that day. However, despite them being taken, the fear people felt has still never gone away. Acts of terrorism have caused these new fears while also bringing awareness to the well-being of its first responders. This article by the Chicago Tribune, written less than a month after 9/11, shows how Americans were affected by it. It talks about students specifically and how they had to change their attitudes and things about them when in public because they feared being too American after the attacks. These attitudes were seen directly after the event, but they can also be seen in the modern world for people affected by terrorism. While terrorism is a very negative thing and so many bad things have come about because of it, there are some good things seen too, such as raising awareness for first responders. A 9/11 survivor, Anne Marie Principe, started an organization called the Feel Good Foundation, which provides help and economic relief to people after these events, specifically emergency responders. Because of events and people like this, awareness was brought to the mental and physical health of first responders and survivors, and it's less overlooked today.
How important is it that you guys are staying connected all these years?
It just, it props us up together.
On this,
Our modern world has definitely learned from the attacks in the past. We've created inventions and security that helps us anticipate, prepare, and protect from the attacks. We've also had many new challenges we've had to front while also becoming a more supportive nation. We should never forget that terrorist events have happened, but learn from them and make our nation stronger as it is today.